Hey everyone, it's Chris from California PsychWorks or CA PsychWorks, and we're going to be talking about the EFI test bench. So we got in another batch of injectors, and it's time to test them. We usually test all of our products like 100%. Anything we buy, not just from China, but anything we sell, if there's a way to test it to make it better, or to prove quality or reliability, just make something better, we do it. Like we do that for all of our things. So this gizmo started life as a kind of typical Chinese test bench. Let me see if I can get your angle. Now let's put you right down here with me. All right, what are we doing? We're somehow screwing this up, of course. All right, so, background, of course. Background, there's a lathe in the way. Let's see what we're going to do. Obviously, I'm well prepared, not at all. But that's normal for me. I like to just go live because until people notice I exist, I'm not going to bother to edit videos or anything. Like, I just kind of can't be bothered. And eventually people will complain or tell me I need to make changes. All right, so that helps a little. All right, okay. Yeah, so this is your typical. Oh, now there's that. Okay, that's all you get. Fine. This is your typical Chinese test bench. A few things have happened to it, so it's a little bit taken apart. Like I got off, and we'll get into that in a minute. They come with a number of tubes. Mine has 6. I don't know why I chose 6. 4 didn't seem enough. 8 were too many. You know, we work on Ducati motorcycles, so there's only 2 of those at a time. So I was like, well, if we get 6, I can do 2, 2, and 2. And so, you get this shiny toy and you start playing with it, and it came with a front panel, and the front panel kind of sucked. It would have, it was like reset for whatever. Drain means drain the tubes, and then pumping means turn the pump on but don't actually do anything. And then you could do presets, and it would load a quote unquote RPM or rotation speed of pulse duration, how many pulses it's doing. I forget what timing was. Oh geez, I forget. Like it's been at least 7 or 8 years since this worked. And so you could load a preset, and they only had like 8 or something, and then you could go through selection to pick each thing, and then you could see its value, and you could up it or down it, and then you could hit test, and it would run that test. And that kind of sucked big time because their preset tests were sort of okay, but you had to hit the buttons like a gazillion times in order to get them to make best use of the tubes and the injectors. So we're testing IWP-043 knockoffs from China. I did not ask them to make them look like original parts. They didn't used to. So that panel bolted on here, or it was glued to this and then bolted to the back, was a logic board that it had LEDs, and it drove a signal around to the back where the PCB is. And so I think I'm going to just put this back on, and then we'll go over this later, maybe. Let's see, get one of these lined up. So pretty much all the Chinese things that are red sheet metal, they're all kind of the same. And so I pretty much replace their hardware with my own, and then I have thumb screws. Like, I just sort of do that all the time. Now, the first thing you might notice is that there's a bunch of bolts hanging out in the bottom of the bench. So we're going to play with this a little bit. All right. Well, what I did was, as an engineer, I kind of want to know reality. So whatever you don't check, you can't assume is correct or not. So I got graduated cylinder, and I measured out, 60, whatever. I picked some value and I poured it in each slot. And then I saw the values were kind of all over the place. So then I added ballast to take up volume until they all had the same value across for the same amount poured into each one. And so that was step one of kind of getting reality in place. So that was like sort of the first thing. Let me grab a little bit of grease here. And this is just like clear, I think this is clear lithium. I just keep it in a little thing whenever there's excess. And so the test bench has this fuel rail on top. You can change out these cups to different sizes. And then I don't remember if they had sleeves to go into the top of the bench or not, but I ended up just machining these out of aluminum. They have a little bit of a step inside to let the injector go further down so I could witness it. And then a little, top hat to just catch it up there. So we're going to take this grease and we're just going to grease all of the O-rings. And so I use a paint pen and I write sort of a serial number on each injector. And we're going to take tests and we're going to write down the results of the tests. And so I just kind of like write that on there and then I keep track. So the point of these cups is you need to make a good seal. So like I said, we greased it up and we put it in. And you need the O-rings to engage in the cups top and bottom. So you don't end up spraying yourself. Now, speaking of spraying, we're not using gasoline in this. It's a little bit stupid to use a flammable fluid because, there's electronics and stuff. I did for a while, and then what happened was that it broke down all the rubber inside the test bench, and it leaked. So, that's no good. So we use just test fluid, EFI test fluid. Let me see if I can make it to where you see it. 5-gallon bucket. I mean, it was like $100 or something, but who cares? It costs less than paying the fire department to come. And then on the back, we've got the EFI connectors. And so our bench is pretty ancient. So the bench on Legit Streetcars channel that they got, it has some cool new stuff, and that was kind of good to see. Now, when we were using their predefined tests, I actually had to set up an oscilloscope up here and capture the waveforms. I capture the waveforms to see what the pulse widths were and all that. Wow, I just turned that light on and nothing happened because it's not plugged in. Okay. Maybe I'll look a little bit less ghostly and pasty. Nah, same diff. So I would come up with tests. When you buy an injector, they just turn it on and measure either an amount of weight over time or milliliters over time. It just, however a factory rates these is kind of a bunch of crap. When you buy import injectors, you know, they're a lot alike. They'll do a little bit with the cups underneath for the spray pattern, and then to change the flow, they just pinch a copper tube in the top, and that regulates a copper or brass, and that regulates the flow, so they're matched that way. They're actually pretty good. Like I found from China, if you say, hey, I want the best thing your factory can make and I'm willing to pay for it, it costs like 2% more and you get fantastically better quality. So one of the things about their pre-done tests is that they test idle circuit impulses. And that's a little bit dumb because they run at idle speed. So the injectors go fire, fire, fire. So to get any quantity of fluid, you're waiting a while. And so while monitoring the pulse widths, you can see on the oscope when the coil fires to open, and you can watch it close, and you can measure all that. And so I had a good amount of time for this is how long a 3 millisecond pulse lasts. Let me see if I have my notes for those. I don't think I've got it here. All of that timing stuff was so far ago. I'll have to bring, at some point I'll have to do another thing about why I picked the exact timing. But I have 4 ranges of tests I do. I do what I call idle, mid. Mid would represent the kind of pulse width you're getting when you're partial throttle, say going 30 to 50 miles an hour. Just that's where you're going to spend most of your time enjoying your motorcycle. And then that and idle are the two biggest important different narrow tests to do. And so the reason why idle to mid is so important is that if your idle is 20% off between 2 cylinders, you're going to notice that. Is it going to be life-changing? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. However, when I had an S2R800 with a pair of hour-matched injectors, there were a few people that rode that bike and said, this is just incredible. So you use idle to mid as you transition from stopped to running, and that's the most crucial portion of when you ride a motorcycle as a street rider. Then I go to load test, where it's the fine balance of maximum duty cycle versus maximum RPM. And so the idle test I'm going to do is probably around 10,000 RPM, because you do 2 milliseconds and then we wait, I don't know, 4 more or 5 more, and then we run it again. So yeah, it's simulating idle, and the time between each pulse is kind of a long time for the system to recover, and it makes a valid test. Same for the mid. I take and calculate what I think the pulse width probably would be based on research and talking to a few different specialists on the internet. And then I have a max RPM or high RPM. Now that one isn't actually gonna be as much flow as my load test. What I do is I run it to just past the maximum expected RPM of the, we're talking like 10 to 11,000 RPM, and then a realistic pulse width that a motorcycle that's making 100 horsepower is gonna deliver. So it's a narrower pulse than load. The load test is the theoretical peak torque with a slightly more than observed maximum pulse width for people who are intimate with tuning these motorcycles. And so my idle time was actually the same as what my S2R800 was. I measured the pulse width with an O-scope while the bike was idling, and that's what I picked as the idle time. So let's go ahead and quit blabbing and we'll run a test. Let's see, how do I show you? Well, I kind of can't fit everything. So I ended up making my own controller. It has 4 tests on here. And then, so this little gizmo box has 3 buttons on top. You can kind of see there's the dark spots. And then there's a little menu item underneath each one: pump, test, drain. So I think I just hit the middle one for test, and this thing should run the pump for a second. And hopefully we don't have leaks. Oh, we have a horrible leak. Is it from that hose? Oh yeah, this quick connect fitting died, so, well, we're gonna have to change that out. So we don't get to actually run the test for a moment here. We might have another fitting, or can I just undo it and redo it? Let's see. Maybe I could show you all what's happening. So I sort of expected this because every time it's been a couple years, something goes wrong again. That's sort of how it rolls. Yeah, this one here is really grumpy. So this is why we don't using gasoline. So definitely that that one's gonna need replacing. So that's too bad. Ooh, do I have a spare? Oh, I bet that one's dead. Why would I have a spare in this box? Let's see. We've got a few spares. All right. Well, let's grab one of these other ones that looks a little better. Yay, excitement. All right, so these are 3/4 inch. So I ended up replacing all of the original fittings that were on the bench from China with stuff from McMaster Car mostly, or the Zon. The Zon being Bezos's income. Uh-oh, which is which? Fail. I think this is the new one. Crap. That's kind of funny. And then we're going to get a little bit of Teflon tape. So this is gasoline safe, even though we're not gasoline. Oh, wait. What size? Oh, we need a bigger threads. Okay, so we need a bigger threaded one. Or we're going to have to find an adapter. Well, that's just great. Well, I kind of filled up my whole world here. Oh, cool. Here's the new ones. Here's a whole bag of that same one. All right, good. Always buy a few extras. Okay, we'll throw this in. Hopefully this fixes our issue. I mean, of course, the sarcasm would be, well, we'll find where the next leak is. That's just my usual expectation. And I'm going to have other videos where I talk about the design of stuff and the choices I made for the components. All right, let's give this another shot. Now the bottom one went. All right. Yeah, we have this cheesy plastic vessel because the original one from China leaked pretty bad. Because when everything kind of, the original hose is all sort of melted. So imagine it did this everywhere because it was, gasoline I was using instead of test fluid. And I mean, at least I wasn't doing ethanol, but still, I was using gasoline, and you really shouldn't do that. Let's see how this goes. All right. So we have our loop going. This is the pressure regulator, and it's returning. Okay, let's turn you back around. And maybe we'll be able to do a test. Bunches of spare parts. Move you in. See, we go back up to low. We're going to do drain. I think drain, I toggle. Yeah, that's right. I toggle the injectors on and off with drain to relieve pressure so that you can undo the quick connect and not get sprayed in the face. So let's go ahead and run our low test. So the pulses you're getting here, it's the same pulse width as at idle. And then we have a long enough wait before the next pulse that the fuel injector recovers fully, and then we start the next pulse. Otherwise, we'd be here forever waiting. It looks like we've got a failure here, like this guy's going to be dead. So yeah, this is sort of normal. These two are a little bit outliers. The fact that this guy here is like 20 is really not good. Let's look at some of our history. They're supposed to be somewhere near 40th, are they? Okay, so I've seen some in the 30s and 40s from previous tests. Now, the next thing you need to check is that your bench isn't leaking while you're writing your numbers down, because one of the times I came here and I did a test and like it was just draining. So I had to take apart all the solenoids and put them all back together. So that's a little disappointing. You know, you hit drain, which is the right one. And this one's drain sucks a lot. So we're probably going to turn off this tube and we'll be doing 5 at a time. So we're just going to say this cylinder is bad altogether. In fact, I think we'll just, what we should do is swap in the bad guy. So you can't take the injector out and leave it empty, because then you've got a hole on here that's spraying. All right, we'll put this back in. Swap that over to here. So he's still trying to drain. Yeah, we're just going to ignore, we're going to call 5 bad, that tube. So now we're going to do the mid test on these 5. So you can see this one's got a little bit of a weird spray. And this one's a little more defined. The rest have a pretty good spray pattern. I'm a little kind of worried about this batch of injectors. We'll see. We might be sending some back to them. So we got 59 to 82. And so obviously near 60-ish, which this would be expected. So these two are pretty well matched so far. 2 and 4 might end up being perfectly matched. So we do a drain. Now, to match the injectors, we're talking about 4 different tests. And I use an SQL database, and I've got a pretty incredible query that groups them. And so we do a difference of 2 cc's or 3, depending on the batch. And so that ends up with folks getting really amazing results. And then now this is going to be the load. Now we've got our kind of max duty cycle going. And these two are going to be pretty close. And interesting, this guy came back around. Well, all three of these are 77-ish. 76, 77, 77, 88, and 68. If injector is going to leak, you will see it as the test begins. There's a couple seconds when it runs under pressure before the tests start. And this would be pretty much, you've gone wide open throttle on the track. This would be like along a straight. So remember I said this one and this one were really matched earlier, except for, they're off by 4 now. Oh, 6. This is 76. That's 82. But, here, these two are pretty close, but they weren't close in other tests. And that's why you have the 4-way tests to compare. Now I'll do a close-up on the control panel that I made. And so the UI is all just me. I have an XY location for each thing, and I mean, it's a little bit extra programming, but it's really not that hard once you've done it a few times. And then you try to reuse code, a lot. So like the stuff that does low, mid, load, high, that's all like in an array with offsets, kind of the same with pump, test, drain. And then this little box shows when it sees a press. And so this is the pump test. It just runs the pump. Run this test that's selected. Now it does have this little joystick. And so when you run a test, so you see pump, then test. And then this is making the pulse width, doing all the math. Like it's all programmed into the logic inside this box via C code. And we'll go ahead and just bail on the test. And then it advances to the next test. I wonder what debug menu does. Oh, there we go. The period, the pulse width, and the count. And so the first bench had an Arduino running it, and in the 18 mega registers, you had to do a lot of crazy manipulations to get frequencies or periods. These numbers are going to be in microseconds. So it's 14 milliseconds is the period. The pulse width is 2.48 milliseconds. And it does 2,500 pulses. So the mid is actually a little bit slower on the period so that we have a good time between each pulse. Now we're at 6.36 milliseconds. We only do 2,000 counts. Load, 12.6 milliseconds. And then high is 9.8 milliseconds. And that's on a 12 millisecond period. So that's pretty, you're right up against duty cycle. Like we've only got 2.5 milliseconds recovery on this load. And so you're right up against the duty cycle on what the injector can do. So that's the thing I built. And so we'll take and record all these tests. Let me get an example. And we write down all these values. And then we'll enter them into, I have a web page or a web app for it, and it enters it in the database. And then you ask it to match them, and then it'll give you a list of candidates. Let's see, are there any that are close-ish? I don't know. So AA is a match with AM. So like 51 and 88, so where's AM? 49 and 88, 74 to 75, 81 to 81. So it's like, you know, the database goes through and the query does a great job getting our match candidates for us. So that's about it for today. I think that's a good little intro. I'm a little bit bummed about how quality looks right now on those. I was expecting and hoping for something a little better, but then again, we've just tested 6 of a batch of 80, and we'll see how that goes. So anyway, thanks for watching, and feel free to comment and ask questions. Definitely, I'm willing to go on and on about any aspect of this, and I will be, because they've got software engineering, you got some electrical engineering, some design choices, and I'm pretty in love with this bench and how it's come out. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.